The rhythmic beep of his smartwatch woke Daniel at 3:17 a.m. He groaned, rolling onto his side to squint at the screen. The glow of the display cast eerie shadows across his bedroom, illuminating the half-empty water bottle on his nightstand and the crumpled running shorts on the floor. 1,247 steps logged. The notification read. Daniel frowned. That couldn't be right. He'd gone to bed at 11 p.m., exhausted from his evening run. He hadn't moved since hadn't even gotten up for water. He tapped the notification, pulling up the step map. A dotted line traced a looping path through his small apartment, from his bedroom, down the hall, into the kitchen, around the living room, and back again. His pulse quickened. Glitch, he muttered, shaking his wrist as if that might reset the data. The watch had been acting up lately, sometimes freezing mid-run, sometimes logging phantom miles. He'd meant to take it in for service, but between work and training for the upcoming marathon, he'd kept putting it off. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his eyes. He'd read somewhere that sleepwalking could trigger step counts, but he'd never done that before. Then again, stress could do weird things to a person. He set the watch back on the charger and flopped onto his pillow, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. No creaking floorboards, no footsteps. Just his imagination. He closed his eyes, willing himself back to sleep. But as he drifted off, the watch beeped again. 1,253 steps. Daniel didn't check the map this time. He pulled the blanket over his head and told himself it was nothing. Tomorrow he'd get the watch fixed. Tomorrow everything would be normal again. The next night Daniel barely slept. He lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of his apartment. His smartwatch sat on the nightstand, silent for now. He'd taken it to the store that afternoon, only to be told there was nothing wrong with it. Must have been a one-time glitch, the technician had said with a shrug. But Daniel wasn't convinced. He glanced at his phone. 2:58 a.m. If the steps happened again, he'd be ready. 3 minutes passed in tense silence. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the watch lit up. Daniel snatched it, his breath shallow as he watched the step count climb. 10:35, 112, the numbers ticked upward steadily, as if someone or something were pacing through his apartment. His fingers trembled as he pulled up the step map. The same looping path. Bedroom, hallway, kitchen, living room, repeat. Daniel swallowed hard. He hadn't moved. He knew he hadn't. Okay, he whispered, forcing himself to think logically. Security footage. He'd installed cameras last year after a break-in scare. They covered the front door, the living room, and the hallway. If something was moving in his apartment, they'd catch it. He grabbed his laptop from the floor and opened the surveillance app, rewinding to 3 a.m. The timestamp ticked backward, then forward again as he hit play. The screen showed his empty living room, bathed in the dim glow of street light filtering through the blinds. The hallway camera revealed nothing but stillness. No movement, no footsteps, yet his watch continued counting. 487 steps. Daniel's stomach twisted. He rewound the footage again, slowing it down frame by frame. Nothing. Impossible, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. He glanced at the watch once more. The step map was still tracing its relentless loop, an invisible runner retracing the same path over and over. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. If the cameras couldn't see it, what could? He set the laptop aside, his mind racing. A glitch? A malfunction? Or something else? The watch beeped again. 5:12 steps. Daniel exhaled sharply and reached for his phone. Tomorrow he'd call the watch company again. But deep down he knew this wasn't a glitch. The footsteps started at 3:17 a.m. Daniel sat bolt upright in bed, his breath trapped in his throat. They were soft at first, barely more than a whisper against the hardwood, but unmistakable. A slow, deliberate tread from the hallway, moving toward his bedroom door. His dog, Rex, lifted his head from the foot of the bed. A low growl rumbled in the animal's chest, his ears pinned back. Daniel's fingers dug into the sheets. "Rex," he whispered. The footsteps paused. Rex's growl deepened, his hackles rising as he stared at the closed bedroom door. His lips curled back, baring teeth at nothing. Daniel's smartwatch buzzed on the nightstand. He didn't need to look to know the step count was climbing. Thump, the sound came from just outside the door. Rex launched off the bed with a snarl, landing in a defensive crouch, his tail stiff. The footsteps retreated down the hall, quick now, almost hurried, but Rex didn't relax. He stalked forward, nose twitching, as if following a scent Daniel couldn't detect. Daniel forced himself to move. His legs shook as he swung them over the side of the bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floor. He grabbed the baseball bat leaning against the nightstand, his pulse roaring in his ears. "Hello?" His voice cracked. Silence. Then tap, 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 the sound of something moving through the kitchen. Rex bolted out of the bedroom, his claws scrabbling against the hardwood. Daniel followed, gripping the bat so tightly his knuckles ached. The hallway was empty. The living room, too. But the kitchen light was on. Daniel froze. He knew he hadn't left it on. Rex stood in the doorway, his growl reduced to a tense whine. The fridge hummed, the faucet dripped. And on the counter, next to the sink, Daniel's water glass, half full, beaded with condensation. He hadn't left that out either. The watch buzzed again. Daniel glanced down. 1,247 steps. The same number as last night. Rex suddenly lunged toward the back door, barking wildly at the empty space in front of it. His fur stood on end, his body rigid with aggression. Daniel's breath came in short gasps. There was nothing there. Nothing, but Rex saw something. The barking stopped as abruptly as it had started. Rex tilted his head, sniffed the air once, then trotted back to Daniel's side, his tail wagging hesitantly. The kitchen light flickered. Daniel's grip on the bat loosened. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stared at the glass on the counter. A thin trail of water led from its base to the edge, as if it had been recently lifted. He reached for his watch, pulling up the step map. The looping path ended at the back door. Daniel exhaled shakily and crouched beside Rex, running a hand through the dog's fur. "What did you see, boy?" Rex whined and licked his hand, but his eyes kept darting back to the door. Daniel stood, his mind racing. The watch wasn't broken. Cameras weren't faulty. Something or someone was in his apartment, and it didn't want to be seen. Daniel didn't sleep the rest of the night. He sat on the couch, Rex pressed against his side, watching the kitchen light flicker intermittently until dawn crept through the blinds. The watch lay silent on the coffee table, its screen dark for now. By sunrise, he had half convinced himself it was all in his head. Stress, exhaustion, maybe even carbon monoxide poisoning, though the detector chirped a reassuring green light every time he checked. He rubbed his eyes and stood, stretching the stiffness from his limbs. Rex trotted to the back door, scratching to be let out. Yeah, Daniel muttered, unlocking it. The morning air was crisp, the sky still tinged with pink. Rex bounded into the small backyard, sniffing the grass with his usual enthusiasm. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching him, when his phone buzzed in his pocket. A notification from his watch. His stomach dropped. He pulled out the phone, thumb hovering over the alert. It wasn't a step count this time. It was a message. Unknown sender, I ran for you. Daniel's breath hitched. His watch didn't have messaging capabilities. It tracked steps, heart rate, sleep, that was it. His fingers trembled as he tapped the notification. The screen loaded a blank chat window, the words "I ran for you" glaring up at him in plain white text. No contact name, no number. Rex barked, snapping Daniel's attention back to the yard. The dog stood rigid at the far fence, his nose pressed to the wood, tail stiff. "Rex," Daniel called. The dog didn't move. Daniel pocketed his phone and stepped outside, the dew-damp grass cool under his bare feet. "What is it?" Rex let out a low, uncertain whine. Daniel approached slowly, his pulse quickening. The fence was old, the wood weathered and splintered in places. Rex was fixated on a narrow gap between two planks, a crack barely wide enough to see through. Daniel crouched beside him. "What's got you spooked, huh?" He leaned closer, peering through the gap, and froze. On the other side of the fence, nestled in the overgrown grass of the neighboring yard, was a single running shoe. Worn, mud-caked, familiar. Daniel's throat tightened. It looked just like the pair he'd thrown out last month, the ones he'd retired after the soles had split during a long training run. But that wasn't possible. The trash had been collected weeks ago. Rex whined again, backing away from the fence. Daniel straightened, his skin prickling. He pulled out his phone again, staring at the message. "Unknown sender, I ran for you." A gust of wind rustled the trees overhead. The shoe shifted slightly, as if nudged by an unseen foot. Daniel's breath came fast. He stumbled back toward the house, Rex at his heels. Inside, he locked the door. His watch buzzed again. Another message. "Unknown sender, you left me behind." Daniel's hands shook as he typed a reply, his fingers clumsy with adrenaline. "Daniel, who is this?" The response was immediate. "Unknown sender, look again." Daniel's gaze flicked to the window. The backyard was empty now. The shoe was gone. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, fingers clenched around his phone, the eerie message still burning behind his eyelids. "You left me behind." The words coiled in his gut like a sickness. Rex lay beside him, ears twitching at every creak of the apartment. The dog hadn't relaxed since the backyard, his usual playful energy replaced by a tense vigilance. Daniel exhaled and checked his watch. 2:58 a.m., 19 minutes until the steps started. If they started. He swallowed hard, thumb hovering over the surveillance app. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe whatever this was had gotten bored. A soft click echoed from the hallway. Daniel's head snapped up. Rex lifted his muzzle, a low growl vibrating in his chest. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Daniel always left it open a crack for Rex. But now, through the narrow gap, he saw it, a flicker of pale light, pulsing faintly in the darkness. The watch on his wrist lit up. Steps logged 12. Daniel's breath caught. Too early. It wasn't even 3 a.m. Yet, Rex stood, his growl deepening. The light beyond the door grew brighter, casting long, wavering shadows across the floorboards. It wasn't the warm glow of a lamp or the sterile blue of a phone screen. This was something else. Yep, something wrong. Daniel's pulse hammered in his throat. He reached for the baseball bat beside the bed, his fingers slick with sweat. Steps logged 27. The numbers climbed faster than before. The light shifted, dimming for a moment before flaring brighter, almost like a breath. Then slowly, something moved in the hallway. A shadow, tall, thin, human-shaped. Daniel's grip on the bat tightened. His mouth went dry. The figure didn't walk. It glided, its movements unnaturally smooth, the light emanating from it pulsing in time with the watch's step count. Steps logged 43. Rex's growl turned into a sharp, panicked bark. He lunged toward the door, then skidded to a halt, his tail tucked between his legs. The figure stopped. The light brightened, illuminating the hallway in a sickly pallor, and for the first time, Daniel saw its face. Or what should have been a face. Where features should have been, there was only a smooth, glowing blankness like a mask carved from pale fire. No eyes, no mouth. Just light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel's stomach lurched. The figure tilted its head. Then a sound. Not footsteps, not a voice, but a whisper of static crackling through the air like a radio tuned between stations. Beneath it, something else, a voice, warped and distant, struggling to form words. Dan, I yelled. Daniel recoiled. His name. It was saying his name. Rex whimpered and pressed against his legs. The figure raised a hand, long fingers, almost skeletal, and pressed it against the door. The wood groaned under the weight, the hinges straining. Steps logged 87. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. He tightened his grip on the bat, his muscles coiled to strike. The figure pushed. The door creaked open another inch. Light spilled into the bedroom, washing over Daniel's skin like ice water. The static grew louder, the voice beneath it clearer now. You left. The watch vibrated violently against Daniel's wrist. Steps logged 112. The figure stepped forward. Daniel swung the bat. It passed straight through the glowing form, meeting no resistance, the impact sending a jolt up his arms. The figure didn't react. It didn't even flinch. Rex let out a terrified yelp and bolted under the bed. The figure loomed over Daniel, its blank face inches from his. The static roared in his ears, the voice now a chorus of whispers, overlapping, tangled. Ran for you, left me, ran for you. The watch screen flashed red. Steps logged 1,247. Then, Daniel's breath hitched. He glanced at his legs again, the muscles twitching under his skin. It wasn't just fatigue. It was the specific, familiar soreness of a hard run, the kind that settled into your bones and lingered for days. The kind he used to relish after a good training session. Now it filled him with dread. Rex suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he stared at the hallway. Daniel followed his gaze. The air shimmered just for a second like heat rising off pavement. Then, a whisper, "You used to love running." The voice was clearer now, less static. Almost human, Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, a flicker of movement in the hallway mirror. Daniel turned slowly, his muscles protesting. The reflection showed his exhausted face, his disheveled hair, the dark circles under his eyes. And behind him, a shadow. Not the glowing figure from before. This was different. Solid, real, a man. Tall, lean, dressed in running shorts and a sweat-soaked shirt. Daniel's breath caught. The man in the mirror looked like him, same sharp jaw, same unruly dark hair. But his eyes were wrong, too wide, too bright, almost gleaming with something hungry. The reflection smiled. Daniel's watch buzzed. "Unknown sender, you left me behind," the words echoed in his head as the figure in the mirror raised a hand palm out and pressed it against the glass. Daniel's legs buckled. Pain lanced through his muscles, sudden and brutal, as if he'd been sprinting for miles. He gasped, collapsing onto the floor, his vision swimming. Rex barked wildly, circling him, nose prodding his side. The reflection stepped closer. The glass fogged where its breath should have been. Daniel's watch lit up again. 1.02 miles logged. The same distance. The same loop. The same ache. The figure's smile widened. "You're getting slower," it whispered. Then the mirror cleared. The reflection was gone. Daniel lay on the floor, his legs trembling, his skin slick with sweat. Rex licked his face, whining. Daniel's phone buzzed one last time. "Unknown sender tomorrow. We run farther." Daniel stared at the mirror long after the figure vanished, his breath still ragged, his legs throbbing with phantom exhaustion. The glass was clear now, reflecting only his own haggard face and the dim living room behind him. Rex whined and nudged his arm, his warm tongue lapping at Daniel's clammy skin. "It's okay," Daniel murmured, though the words felt hollow. He pushed himself up onto shaky legs, wincing at the lingering soreness. His muscles remembered that run even if he hadn't taken a single step. He limped to the bathroom, gripping the doorframe for balance. The fluorescent light flickered as he flicked it on, casting harsh shadows across the tiles. He turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on his face, hoping the shock would ground him. When he looked up, the mirror above the sink was fogged. Not from steam, not from his breath. Words were scrawled into the condensation, the letters jagged and hurried. "Look closer." Daniel's stomach lurched. He wiped the mirror with his sleeve, but the words didn't smear. They deepened, etching into the glass like frost. A choked sound escaped his throat. Behind his reflection, something moved. A shadow. A flicker. Then a face. Not the glowing figure. Not the twisted version of himself. This was different. Familiar. Daniel's breath hitched. The face in the mirror was his father's. Same sharp jawline. Same deep-set eyes. But his father had been dead for 10 years. The reflection's lips parted. "You left me behind too," it whispered. Daniel recoiled, his back hitting the wall. The mirror cracked, a single fissure splitting the glass down the center, severing his father's face in two. Rex barked from the hallway, his claws clicking against the tile as he bounded into the bathroom. He skidded to a stop in front of Daniel, growling at the mirror. The glass was clear again. No words. No face. Just Daniel's own wide-eyed terror staring back at him. His watch buzzed. "Unknown sender, you were always running away." Daniel's hands shook as he typed his reply. "Daniel, what do you want?" The response was immediate. Unknown sender to finish the race, then a noise from the living room. A thud. Daniel's pulse spiked. Rex bolted out of the bathroom, barking wildly. Daniel followed, his legs protesting with every step. The living room was empty, but on the coffee table, his father's old running medal, tarnished, mud-stained. Impossible, Daniel had buried it with him. He reached for it, his fingers trembling. The moment his skin touched the cold metal, the watch buzzed violently. Steps logged, 1,247. The same number as the first night. The same loop. The same ending. Daniel's vision blurred. The walls seemed to breathe around him, the air thick with the scent of sweat and damp earth. A whisper brushed against his ear. "You left us both behind." Then silence. The metal clattered to the floor. Daniel sank to his knees, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Rex pressed against him, whining. The watch screen dimmed. But the message remained, to finish the race, and Daniel knew. The footsteps wouldn't stop. Not until he faced what he'd been running from. Darkness. The light vanished. The static cut off. Daniel stood alone in his bedroom, bat still raised, his breath coming in frantic bursts. The hallway was empty. The watch screen dimmed, returning to its usual display. No steps, no messages. Just the time, 3:17 a.m. Daniel's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the bed, his entire body trembling. Under the bed, Rex whined. Daniel dropped the bat and reached for him, his fingers brushing the dog's fur. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's gone." But as he said it, his watch buzzed once more. For a new message. Unknown sender. Not for long. The next morning, Daniel dragged himself to the coffee shop down the street, his exhaustion clinging to him like a second skin. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing figure, its blank, pulsing face, its outstretched hand. Rex trotted beside him, leash slack, his usual exuberance dulled by the same unease that gnawed at Daniel's gut. The coffee shop was quiet, the mid-morning lull leaving only a few patrons scattered at small tables. Daniel ordered a double espresso and slumped into a corner chair, rubbing his temples. "Rough night?" The voice startled him. Daniel looked up to see Mrs. Calloway, his elderly neighbor from down the hall, standing beside his table with a concerned frown. She clutched a to-go cup in one hand, her silver hair neatly pinned back as always. Yeah, Daniel admitted, forcing a weak smile. "Didn't sleep much." Mrs. Calloway hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from him. "Mind if I join you?" Daniel shook his head, though he wasn't in the mood for conversation. Rex settled at his feet with a quiet huff. Mrs. Calloway took a careful sip of her tea before speaking again. "I heard you last night." Daniel's fingers tightened around his cup. "What?" "The footsteps," she said, lowering her voice. "Pacing up and down the hallway. Around 3 a.m., wasn't it?" Daniel's pulse spiked. He hadn't left his apartment, hadn't moved from his bed after the figure vanished. But something had. He swallowed hard, scrambling for an explanation. "Oh right, that was me. I was training." Mrs. Calloway arched a brow. "At 3 a.m.? Daniel forced a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Marathon prep. Sometimes I do late-night runs if I can't sleep." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp despite her age. "You know, Daniel, I've lived in that building for 20 years. I've heard a lot of things, parties, arguments, even the occasional ghost story from superstitious tenants. She leaned in slightly, but I've never heard footsteps like that. A chill crept down Daniel's spine. What do you mean? Mrs. Calloway hesitated, then sighed. They weren't right, too light, too quick. Almost like she cut herself off, shaking her head. Never mind. Just an old woman's imagination. Daniel's mouth went dry. No, tell me. She met his eyes, like whoever it was wasn't touching the floor. Daniel's coffee sat untouched, forgotten. Mrs. Calloway reached across the table and patted his hand. You're a good kid, Daniel. If something's wrong, if you need help, you know where to find me. She stood, gathering her things, but paused before leaving. Oh, and Daniel? He looked up. Lock your door tonight. Then she was gone, leaving Daniel alone with his racing thoughts and the echo of her warning. Rex whined softly, nudging Daniel's knee. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He had lied to Mrs. Calloway, but she hadn't lied to him. And that terrified him more than anything. The nights bled together in a haze of exhaustion. Daniel had stopped sleeping altogether. He sat on his couch, laptop open, scrolling through security footage from the past week. The same looping path, bedroom, hallway, kitchen, living room, traced over and over by an unseen force. But now, something had changed. The circle was tightening. Each night, the path grew shorter, the phantom footsteps creeping closer to his bedroom. Last week, they'd stopped at the back door. 2 nights ago, they'd reached the edge of the living room rug. Tonight, they ended just outside his bedroom. Daniel rubbed his burning eyes and glanced at the time, 2:53 a.m., 24 minutes until the steps began. Rex lay curled at his feet, his body tense even in sleep. The dog had barely left Daniel's side since the glowing figure appeared, his usual boundless energy sapped by the same unseen dread that clung to the apartment. Daniel closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He'd tried everything, disabling the watch, resetting the router, even smudging the apartment with sage at Mrs. Calloway's hesitant suggestion. Nothing worked. The steps kept coming. The messages kept appearing. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Daniel's stomach dropped. Too early. He grabbed it, his pulse roaring in his ears as he read the notification. Unknown sender, almost there. His fingers trembled as he typed a reply. Daniel, what do you want? The response was immediate. Unknown sender, you know. Daniel exhaled sharply and stood, pacing the length of the living room. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls pressing in, the air thick with something he couldn't name. He stopped in front of the hallway mirror, his reflection gaunt and shadowed. He barely recognized himself, dark circles under his eyes, his stubble grown into a ragged beard. Behind him, the reflection of the living room stretched into darkness, and then movement. A flicker, a shape. Daniel spun around. Nothing. But when he turned back to the mirror, his breath caught. There, in the glass, stood a figure. Tall, thin. Glowing, its blank face hovered just behind his reflection, its light pulsing faintly in the dim room. Daniel's heart stopped. The figure raised a hand, slow, deliberate, and pressed its palm against the glass from the other side. The mirror fogged beneath its touch. Then, letters formed in the condensation, scrawled as if by an invisible finger. I ran for you. Daniel stumbled back, his legs colliding with the coffee table. Rex jolted awake with a sharp bark, his ears pinned back as he stared at the mirror. The figure was gone, The words remained. Daniel's watch buzzed. Steps logged 1. His breath came in shallow gasps. Too early. It was never this early. Rex growled, his attention snapping to the hallway. Daniel followed his gaze. The hallway light flickered. Then tapped a single footstep, right outside his bedroom door. The circle had tightened again. Tonight it wouldn't stop at the doorway. Tonight it would come inside. The footsteps now sounded like they were inside. Daniel's breath hitched as the watch on his wrist logged another step 47 while he stood frozen in the living room, staring down the darkened hallway. The rhythm was different tonight, no longer the steady pacing of before, but something erratic, impatient. Close. Rex's growl deepened, his body rigid as he faced the hallway, teeth bared. The dog's ears twitched with every faint tap of movement, tracking an unseen presence creeping nearer. Daniel grabbed the baseball bat from beside the couch, his fingers slick with sweat. The mirror's message, "I ran for you," still gleamed wetly behind him, refusing to fade. Another step. 63. The hallway light flickered. A shadow shifted at the edge of Daniel's vision, a quick, darting motion, like someone stepping just out of sight. "Who's there?" His voice cracked. No answer. Only the watch, vibrating again. 78. Rex suddenly lunged forward, barking wildly at the empty hallway. His claws scraped the hardwood as he strained against an invisible force, his muzzle wrinkled in a snarl. Daniel's pulse pounded in his throat. He forced himself to take a step forward, then another, bat raised. The air grew colder with each movement, his breath misting in front of him despite the warm apartment. The bedroom door stood ajar. Inside, the darkness pulsed. Not the natural dark of a room at night, something thicker, hungrier. Daniel's watch buzzed. 1-1-2. A whisper brushed against his ear, so faint he almost missed it. "You left me behind." He whipped around. Nothing. But the voice had been real. Not static. Not distorted. Human. Rex's barking turned frantic. Daniel spun back to see the bedroom door creaking open further, inch by inch, as if pushed by an unseen hand. The darkness beyond rippled, tendrils of it snaking into the hallway. Daniel's legs locked. His grip on the bat faltered. The watch logged another step. 1:47. Then, a footstep. Inside the bedroom, Rex let out a terrified yelp and bolted past Daniel, retreating to the couch. Daniel didn't blame him. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet stayed rooted to the floor. The bedroom light flicked on. Daniel flinched, raising the bat, and choked on a gasp. The room was empty. But his bed was made tight hospital corners. Neatly tucked sheets. Fluffed pillows. Daniel hadn't made his bed in weeks. The watch buzzed again. 2:01. The footsteps resumed, circling the bed now, the sound muffled as if walking on carpet. But Daniel's apartment had hardwood floors. His breath came in shallow, panicked bursts. He took a step back, then another, his shoulders bumping against the wall. The bedroom door began to swing shut. Slowly, deliberately, like someone inside was closing it. Daniel's watch lit up. "Unknown sender, you're tired." His fingers shook as he typed. "Daniel, what are you?" The response came instantly. "Unknown sender, you know." The bedroom door clicked shut. Silence. Daniel's knees gave out. He slid down the wall, the bat clattering to the floor beside him. Rex whined and pressed against his side, his body trembling. The watch buzzed one last time. Steps logged 247. The same number as the first night. A full circle. Daniel buried his face in his hands. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a glitch. It was counting down, and tomorrow night the footsteps wouldn't stop at the door. They'd reach the bed. Daniel's legs burned as if he'd just finished a marathon. He collapsed onto the couch, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the apartment. His breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles screaming in protest. But he hadn't run, hadn't even left the apartment. Yet his watch told a different story. 1.02 miles logged. He stared at the notification, his stomach twisting. The map showed a looping path identical to the phantom steps from the nights before, but this time, the distance was exact. A mile, no more, no less. And his body remembered it. Daniel pressed a hand to his calf, hissing at the ache beneath his fingertips. The pain was real, deep, the kind that came from pushing too hard, too fast. Rex whined beside him, nudging his knee with a wet nose. "I'm okay," Daniel muttered, though the words tasted like a lie. He opened the watch's activity log, scrolling through the data. Heart rate spiked. Calories burned. Even his stride length was recorded -2.3 feet, the same as his usual running form. But he hadn't moved. He knew he hadn't. Daniel exhaled sharply and grabbed his phone, pulling up the surveillance footage from the past hour. The timestamp showed 3:17 a.m. The witching hour, as Mrs. Bowe had called it. The screen displayed his empty living room, the hallway, the kitchen. No movement, no footsteps. Yet his watch had logged a mile. And his legs burned. A notification popped up. Unknown sender. Feel that Daniel's fingers clenched around the phone. "Daniel, what did you do to me?" The reply was immediate. "Unknown sender." We ran together. Daniel's breath hitched. He glanced at his legs again, the muscles twitching under his skin. It wasn't just fatigue. It was the specific, familiar soreness of a hard run, the kind that settled into your bones and lingered for days. The kind he used to relish after a good training session. Now it filled him with dread. Rex suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he stared at the hallway. Daniel followed his gaze. The air shimmered just for a second like heat rising off pavement. Then, a whisper. "You used to love running." The voice was clearer now, less static. Almost human. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, a flicker of movement in the hallway mirror. Daniel turned slowly, his muscles protesting. The reflection showed his exhausted face, his disheveled hair, the dark circles under his eyes. And behind him, a shadow, not the glowing figure from before. This was different. Solid, real, a man. Tall, lean, dressed in running shorts and a sweat-soaked shirt. Daniel's breath caught. The man in the mirror looked like him, same sharp jaw, same unruly dark hair. But his eyes were wrong, too wide, too bright, almost gleaming with something hungry. The reflection smiled. Daniel's watch buzzed. "Unknown sender, you left me behind." The words echoed in his head as the figure in the mirror raised a hand palm out and pressed it against the glass. Daniel's legs buckled. Pain lanced through his muscles, sudden and brutal, as if he'd been sprinting for miles. He gasped, collapsing onto the floor, his vision swimming. Rex barked wildly, circling him, nose prodding his side. The reflection stepped closer. The glass fogged where its breath should have been. Daniel's watch lit up again. 1.02 miles logged. The same distance. The same loop. The same ache. The figure's smile widened. "You're getting slower," it whispered. Then the mirror cleared. The reflection was gone. Daniel lay on the floor, his legs trembling, his skin slick with sweat. Rex licked his face, whining. Daniel's phone buzzed one last time. "Unknown sender tomorrow, we run farther." Daniel stared at the mirror long after the figure vanished, his breath still ragged, his legs throbbing with phantom exhaustion. The glass was clear now, reflecting only his own haggard face and the dim living room behind him. Rex whined and nudged his arm, his warm tongue lapping at Daniel's clammy skin. "It's okay," Daniel murmured, though the words felt hollow. He pushed himself up onto shaky legs, wincing at the lingering soreness. His muscles remembered their run even if he hadn't taken a single step. He limped to the bathroom, gripping the doorframe for balance. The fluorescent light flickered as he flicked it on, casting harsh shadows across the tiles. He turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on his face, hoping the shock would ground him. When he looked up, the mirror above the sink was fogged. Not from steam, not from his breath. Words were scrawled into the condensation, the letters jagged and hurried. "Look closer," Daniel's stomach lurched. He wiped the mirror with his sleeve, but the words didn't smear. They deepened, etching into the glass like frost. A choked sound escaped his throat. Behind his reflection, something moved. A shadow. A flicker. Then, a face. And not the glowing figure. Not the twisted version of himself. This was different. Familiar. Daniel's breath hitched. The face in the mirror was his father's. Same sharp jawline, same deep-set eyes. But his father had been dead for 10 years. The reflection's lips parted. "You left me behind too," it whispered. Daniel recoiled, his back hitting the wall. The mirror cracked, a single fissure splitting the glass down the center, severing his father's face in two. Rex barked from the hallway, his claws clicking against the tile as he bounded into the bathroom. He skidded to a stop in front of Daniel, growling at the mirror. The glass was clear again, no words. No face, just Daniel's own wide-eyed terror staring back at him. His watch buzzed. "Unknown sender, you were always running away." Daniel's hands shook as he typed his reply. "Daniel, what do you want?" The response was immediate. "Unknown sender," to finish the race. Then, a noise from the living room. A thud. Daniel's pulse spiked. Rex bolted out of the bathroom, barking wildly. Daniel followed, his legs protesting with every step. The living room was empty. But on the coffee table, his father's old running medal. Tarnished, mud-stained. Impossible. Daniel had buried it with him. He reached for it, his fingers trembling. The moment his skin touched the cold metal, the watch buzzed violently. Steps logged, 1,247. The same number as the first night. The same loop. The same ending. Daniel's vision blurred. The walls seemed to breathe around him, the air thick with the scent of sweat and damp earth. A whisper brushed against his ear. "You left us both behind." Then silence. The metal clattered to the floor. Daniel sank to his knees, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Rex pressed against him, whining. The watch screen dimmed. But the message remained. To finish the race, and Daniel knew the footsteps wouldn't stop. Not until he faced what he'd been running from. The phone rang at 3:03 a.m. Daniel jolted awake, his heart slamming against his ribs. The screen glowed in the darkness, casting jagged shadows across the nightstand. Unknown caller Rex lifted his head from the foot of the bed, ears pricked. Daniel hesitated, his fingers hovering over the screen. He never got calls this late. No one called anymore, not at this hour, not without warning. The ringing stopped. Silence. Then it rang again. Daniel exhaled sharply and swiped to answer. "Hello?" Static crackled through the speaker, thick, distorted, like a radio tune between stations. Beneath it, something else, a voice, warped beyond recognition, syllables stretched and broken. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" The static surged, swallowing the voice. Then, abruptly, it cleared just for a second and Daniel heard it. Running the rhythmic slap of sneakers against pavement. Ragged, gasping breaths. The distant wail of sirens. His stomach dropped. The watch on his wrist vibrated in perfect sync with the static, the screen flickering wildly between step counts and heart rate readings. "Left me," the voice broke through again, closer now. "You left." Daniel's throat tightened. "Dad?" The static roared back, drowning the word. The call disconnected. Silence. Daniel stared at the phone, his pulse hammering. The call log showed unknown caller 32 duration, no callback number. No trace. Rex whined, pressing against Daniel's leg. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, pick up next time. Daniel's breath hitched. He typed with shaking fingers. "Daniel, how are you doing this?" The response was immediate. "Unknown sender, you know then." A sound from the hallway. Not footsteps. Wheezing, the wet, labored gasps of someone struggling to breathe. Daniel's blood turned to ice. His father's asthma attacks had sounded like that. Rex snarled, launching off the bed toward the closed door. The wheezing stopped. The watch logged a single step. 1,248.1 more than the loop. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for the baseball bat. The phone rang again. Unknown caller this time. He didn't answer. The voicemail picked up after 4 rings. Daniel played it back, his stomach twisting. More static. More running. And then, clear as day, "You should have stayed." The watch screen flashed red. Steps logged 1,247. The loop reset. Daniel dropped the phone. Outside, the first light of dawn crept through the blinds. But the footsteps were already counting down again. Daniel awoke to darkness. His throat was raw, his body heavy with exhaustion. He couldn't remember falling asleep, only the endless ringing of the phone, the static, the voice that wasn't quite his father's. Rex was gone. The realization jolted him fully awake. The dog never left his side at night, not since the footsteps began. Daniel sat up, fumbling for his phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up 317A.M. casting a pale glow across the room. His bedroom door was closed. He always left it open for Rex. Daniel swung his legs over the side of the bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floor. "Rex," he whispered. No answer. The silence was thick, suffocating. He stood and crossed the room, his fingers wrapping around the doorknob. It turned, then stopped. Locked. Daniel's breath hitched. He never locked his bedroom door. He twisted the knob again, harder this time, but it didn't budge. From the other side, a soft click, the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. "Who's there?" No response. Then, a whisper of movement. The faintest creak of floorboards, as if someone had shifted their weight just beyond the door. Daniel backed away, his hands trembling. His watch buzzed against his wrist. Steps logged, 1,247. The same number. The same loop. But this time the map was different. Instead of the usual path through the apartment, the dotted line led away from his bedroom, down the hall, through the living room, and out the front door. Daniel's stomach twisted. The steps weren't inside anymore. They were leaving a faint scratching sound came from the doornails dragging slowly down the wood. To Rex's claws, but Rex didn't scratch doors. Daniel swallowed hard. "Rex." The scratching stopped. A low, wet whine seeped through the gap under the door, a sound no dog could make. Daniel's watch buzzed again. "Unknown sender," let me in, his fingers clenched into fists. "You're already here." The air in the room grew colder. His breath fogged in front of him, swirling in the dark. The doorknob rattled, not from the outside. From inside, Daniel stumbled back, his legs hitting the edge of the bed. The rattling grew more violent, the lock straining against an unseen force. Then, silence. The watch screen dimmed. The steps on the map vanished. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe. A soft thud against the door, then another. Like a forehead pressed to the wood. A whisper, so quiet he almost missed it. "You left the door open." Daniel's blood turned to ice. The night his father died, the night of his last race, Daniel had been the one to unlock the front door. He'd waited up, listening for the sound of his father's key in the lock. But his father never made it home. The watch buzzed one last time. "Unknown sender, now you're the one locked," and the bedroom light flicked on. Daniel spun around. The room was empty. But the bed sheets were tangled, the pillows dented, as if someone had been lying there beside him. And on the nightstand, next to his phone, sat a single, mud-caked running shoe. The match to the one he'd seen in the neighbor's yard. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for it. The moment his fingers brushed the damp fabric, the lock clicked open. The bedroom door swung inward. The hallway beyond was dark, empty. No footsteps, no Rex. Just the echo of a voice, fading into static, finished the race. Daniel stood in the doorway, his heart pounding. The watch on his wrist lit up. Steps logged, 0. The loop had reset. And this time it was his turn to run. Daniel ran. The pre-dawn air bit at his lungs as his sneakers pounded the pavement, each stride pushing him farther from his apartment, from the locked door, from the whispers that had burrowed under his skin. Rex sprinted ahead, leash trailing behind him, his barks sharp in the empty streets. Daniel didn't remember grabbing the leash, didn't remember opening the front door. All he knew was the need to move. His watch buzzed against his wrist, logging each step, each heartbeat. The screen glowed faintly in the dark, 0.5 miles. A gust of wind hissed through the trees lining the sidewalk. Daniel's breath came in ragged bursts, his legs burning not from exertion, but from the phantom soreness that never faded. The same ache from the miles he hadn't run. Rex suddenly skidded to a halt, his body rigid. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he stared back the way they'd come. Daniel slowed, turning. The street was empty. But the air stirred. A cold breath brushed the nape of his neck, sharp as winter. Daniel recoiled, his pulse spiking. No one was there. No one could be. He was alone on the sidewalk, the nearest building yards away. Yet the sensation lingered, a frosty exhale against his skin. Rex's growl deepened, his muzzle wrinkled, teeth bared at nothing. Daniel's watch buzzed again. He glanced down. Heart rate 112 BPM. And beneath it, a second line heart rate 89 BPM. Daniel's breath caught. 2 readings. His fingers trembled as he tapped the screen. The second heartbeat wasn't his. It was slower, steadier, its rhythm out of sync with his own galloping pulse. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Daniel spun. Nothing. But the cold breath came again, closer this time, whispering past his ear like a sigh. "You're slowing down." The voice was barely audible, threaded with static, but Daniel knew it. For his father's. Rex lunged forward, barking wildly at the empty space beside Daniel. His paws scrabbled against the concrete as if trying to pin something down. Daniel staggered back, his skin crawling. The second heartbeat on his watch climbed 92 BPM, matching the cadence of a light jog. Someone was running beside him, someone he couldn't see. Daniel broke into a sprint, Rex at his heels. The watch logged the distance -0.8 miles, but the second heartbeat kept pace, unwavering. The breath returned, icy against his neck. "You used to be faster." Daniel's legs burned, his muscles screaming as if he'd been running for hours. He risked a glance over his shoulder. The sidewalk stretched empty behind him, but his shadow was wrong. It's too tall, too thin, arms outstretched, fingers grasping. Daniel's breath hitched. He whipped his head forward, pumping his legs harder. The street lights flickered overhead, their glow dimming as if something passed beneath them. Rex snarled, his fur on end. The watch buzzed. 1.0 miles. The second heartbeat spiked 120 BPM as the cold breath seared Daniel's ear. "Don't stop now." Daniel's vision blurred. His lungs burned. The shadow beside him stretched longer, darker, its fingers nearly brushing his shoulder. Then, a car horn blared. Daniel jerked sideways, nearly colliding with a parked sedan. The driver shouted something, but the words drowned in the rush of blood in Daniel's ears. When he looked back, the shadow was gone. The second heartbeat vanished from his watch. The cold breath faded. Daniel bent double, gasping, his hands braced on his knees. Rex pressed against his side, panting, his body still tense. The watch screen dimmed. Steps logged, 1,247. The loop was complete. Daniel straightened, his chest heaving. The first light of dawn crept over the rooftops, painting the street in pale gold. But as he turned toward home, his watch buzzed one last time. "Unknown sender next time. I'll catch you." Daniel's fingers curled into fists. He knew now. This wasn't just a race. It was a chase, and he was running out of time. The concerned neighbor was gone. Daniel stood in the empty hallway outside Mrs. Calloway's apartment, his knuckles hovering over her door for the third time that morning. No answer, no sounds from within, just a hollow silence that made the back of his neck prickle. Rex whined beside him, his nose pressed to the crack under the door, tail stiff. "She's not home," Daniel muttered, more to reassure himself than the dog. But the words rang false. Mrs. Calloway never left her apartment before noon. She'd told him once over tea and stale shortbread that mornings were for crossword puzzles and the Today Show, not errands. Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then clicked straight to voicemail. Her cheerful greeting, "You've reached Ethel Calloway. Leave a message, but don't be long-winded, I've got pies to bake," made his stomach twist. He hung up without speaking. The door across the hall creaked open. Mr. Alvarez, the building superintendent, peered out, his gray-streaked beard bristling. "You looking for Ethel?" Daniel nodded. "Have you seen her?" Alvarez's bushy eyebrows knitted together. "Not since last night. Heard her pacing around midnight, though." "Same as you." Daniel's pulse stuttered. "Pacing?" Up and down the hall. Alvarez mimed the motion with 2 fingers. Back and forth, real quiet like. He frowned. "Thought it was you at first, but then I saw her through the peephole. Just walking." Daniel's watch buzzed against his wrist. He ignored it. "Did she say anything?" Alvarez shook his head. "Nope, just walked. Stopped right outside your door at one point, stood there for a good minute, then turned around and went back to her place." He rubbed his beard. "Weird thing is, she was barefoot." A chill skittered down Daniel's spine. Mrs. Calloway had never gone barefoot. Germs, she'd huffed once when he joked about her floral slippers. "These floors are a petri dish." The watch buzzed again, more insistent this time. Daniel glanced down. Steps logged, 1,247. The same cursed number. But the map wasn't his apartment this time. It was the hallway. A dotted line traced a path from Mrs. Calloway's door to his own, then back again. Over and over, exactly as Alvarez had described. Daniel's throat went dry. Did she look okay?" Alvarez shrugged. "Hard to tell through the peephole. But she was limping a little, like her feet hurt." Rex suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he stared at Mrs. Calloway's door. Daniel followed his gaze. There, barely visible against the worn wood, a smudge. Dark, shiny. Almost like Daniel stepped closer, his stomach lurching. A footprint, small, bare, and at the heel, a faint streak of red. Blood. Alvarez sucked in a sharp breath. What in the... Daniel didn't wait for him to finish. He grabbed the doorknob and twisted. Locked. "Mrs. Calloway?" He knocked harder, his voice rising. "Ethel? Are you in there?" Silence. Then a sound. Faint, muffled, but unmistakable. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap of footsteps, moving toward the door. Daniel's watch buzzed violently. Steps logged 1,248. One more than the loop. The footsteps stopped. Rex let out a sharp, panicked bark and backed away, his hackles raised. The lock clicked. The doorknob turned. Daniel held his breath. The door swung open. The apartment was dark. Empty. No Mrs. Calloway. No footsteps. Just the faint, coppery tang of blood in the air. And on the hardwood floor, leading into the shadows, a trail of bare footprints. Each one darker than the last. Daniel's watch screen lit up. "Unknown sender, she ran for you too." Daniel's breath hitched as he stepped into Mrs. Calloway's apartment, the scent of blood and something sour like damp earth thick in the air. Rex pressed against his leg, a low whine building in the dog's throat. The living room was untouched. A half-finished crossword lay on the coffee table, her floral teacup still perched beside it, the tea long gone cold. The TV was off, the curtains drawn, but the footprints. They trailed down the hallway, vanishing into the dark. Daniel's watch buzzed again. Steps logged, 1,250 dots still climbing. Alvarez hovered in the doorway, his face pale. I'll call the police." Daniel barely nodded, his focus locked on the hallway. The footprints gleamed faintly in the dim light, each one a smeared outline, as if the person who'd made them had been dragging their feet. He followed them, Rex at his side, his pulse pounding in his ears. The first door was the bathroom, empty. The second, a linen closet, nothing. The last door was Mrs. Calloway's bedroom, closed. Daniel's fingers trembled as he reached for the knob. Rex growled, his nose twitching at the gap beneath the door. The moment Daniel's skin touched the cold metal, his watch vibrated violently. Steps logged, 1,247. The loop reset. Daniel pushed the door open. The room was dark, the only light bleeding in from the hallway. The air was heavier here, thicker like the stillness before a storm. And on the bed, a shape. Daniel's stomach lurched. Mrs. Calloway lay on her back, still dressed in her nightgown, her hands folded neatly over her chest. Her eyes were closed, her skin waxy. She looked peaceful. But her feet were ruined. The soles were raw, shredded, as if she'd walked miles on broken glass. Dark streaks of blood stained the sheets beneath her, the scent coppery and cloying. Daniel staggered back, bile rising in his throat. Rex let out a sharp, distressed yelp and bolted from the room. Alvarez's voice echoed from the living room, frantic. "Police are on their way." Oh God, Daniel couldn't move. Couldn't look away, because now in the dim light he saw them. The footprints. Not just on the floor, nor on the ceiling, dozens of them. Crisscrossing, overlapping, as if someone had walked upside down, their bare feet pressing against the plaster. And at the center of the ceiling, a single word, scrawled in what looked like rust or dried blood, "Run." Daniel's watch buzzed. Unknown sender, too late for her. A whisper brushed against his ear, so faint he almost missed it. "You're next." Then a sound from outside. A sharp, panicked bark. Rex Daniel sprinted from the room, nearly colliding with Alvarez in the hallway. The older man grabbed his arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "The police are coming, don't touch anything." Daniel shook him off. "Rex." He burst out of the apartment, his heart hammering. The hallway was empty. No Rex, no sign of him. But near the stairwell, a single, muddy paw print. And beside it, a trail of wet footprints, leading downstairs. Daniel didn't hesitate. He took the steps 2 at a time, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The lobby was deserted, the front door slightly ajar. He pushed through it, the morning sunlight blinding after the dim interior. The street was quiet, no Rex. But across the road, in the overgrown yard of the abandoned house next door, movement. A shadow darting behind the rusted swing set. Daniel's watch buzzed. Steps logged, 1,248. He crossed the street without looking, his focus locked on the yard. The grass was knee-high, choked with weeds and litter. The air smelled of damp earth and something sharper like ozone. "Rex," Daniel called, his voice cracking. No bark, no response, just the whisper of tall grass shifting in the breeze. Then a glint of metal. Daniel's stomach dropped. Nestled in the weeds, half hidden, was a dog collar. Rex's collar. The buckle was broken. The tags missing. And beside it, a single, mud-caked running shoe. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for the collar. The moment his fingers brushed the worn leather, his watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, you left him behind, to Daniel's vision blurred. He stumbled back, the collar clutched in his fist. The tall grass rustled. A shadow moved. Closer this time. Daniel's breath hitched. The watch screen flashed red. Steps logged 1,247. The loop reset. And from the depths of the overgrown yard, a whisper, ready or not, Daniel ran. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, fingers digging into the mattress, his gaze locked on the bedroom door. It was cracked open just enough to see the sliver of darkened hallway beyond. Rex's absence was a physical ache, a hollow space where the dog's warmth should have been. The watch on his wrist was silent. For now. 3:16 a.m. 1 minute. Daniel's breath hitched as the digital numbers flickered. 3:17. The watch lit up. A single step logged. Then another. Steps. 1, 2. The map showed the usual loop: bedroom, hallway, kitchen, living room, but tonight, something was different. The screen flickered. Static hissed from the watch's tiny speaker, a sound like a radio tuned between stations. Beneath it, a whisper: Daniel. His name. Clear. Unmistakable. Daniel's throat tightened. Who's there? No answer. The static swelled, the whisper repeating Daniel, 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 each iteration more distorted than the last, until it no longer sounded human. The watch screen glitched, the display fracturing into jagged lines. Symbols flashed, glyphs Daniel didn't recognize, sharp and angular, like scratches in stone. Then, as suddenly as it started, the static cut off. Silence. The watch screen cleared. Steps logged 1,247. The loop complete. Daniel exhaled shakily and rubbed his eyes. The symbols lingered in his vision, burned into his retinas like afterimages of lightning. A gust of wind rattled the window. Daniel's head snapped up. The bedroom door creaked open another inch. Beyond it, the hallway was dark, too dark. A shadow moved, not the glowing figure from before, not the twisted reflection of himself. This was something new, something. Watching, Daniel's fingers found the baseball bat beside the bed, and his pulse roared in his ears. The shadow stepped forward. The watch buzzed violently. Unknown sender, say my name. Daniel's breath caught. The shadow in the hallway tilted its head. The watch screen flickered again, the strange symbols reappearing, but this time they shifted, rearranging themselves into something almost legible. Her name. Daniel's lips parted. The moment the first syllable left his mouth, the bedroom light exploded. Glass rained down as darkness swallowed the room. Daniel staggered back, bat raised, his heart slamming against his ribs. The watch screen was the only light now, its glow sickly green. A new message, unknown sender, too late. The shadow lunged. Daniel swung. The bat connected with nothing. The watch shattered on his wrist, the screen going black. Silence. Then a whisper, so close it brushed his ear. Run. Daniel ran. The security cameras failed at 3 a.m. Daniel knew at the moment. The feed on his laptop flickered to black. 1 second, the hallway was visible, empty. bathed in the dim glow of the nightlight, and the next, the screen dissolved into static. He tapped frantically at the keyboard, cycling through the camera angles. The living room, the kitchen, the front door, all dead. His watch buzzed against his wrist. Steps logged 1,247. But this time, the map was blank. No looping path. No phantom route. Just a single blinking dot, his location pulsing in the center of the screen. Daniel exhaled sharply and checked the camera app again. The timestamp still advanced 3:01, 3:02, but the footage was gone, replaced by that same grainy static. Then a sound. A click. The cameras rebooted. The screen cleared. Daniel's breath caught. The timestamp now read 3:17 15 minutes had vanished. And the footage showed him. Daniel leaned closer, his pulse hammering. There he was, clear as day, standing in the middle of his living room. But he hadn't moved from the couch, hadn't breathed in the last 15 minutes. Yet on screen, his doppelganger turned toward the hallway, his movements jerky, unnatural. Then, the figure looked directly into the camera. Daniel's stomach lurched. The eyes were wrong, too wide, too bright. Glowing, the figure smiled, a slow, deliberate stretch of lips that didn't quite match Daniel's own, and raised a single finger to its mouth. The feed cut out again. Silence. Daniel's hands shook as he closed the laptop. His watch buzzed once more. Unknown sender, you see me now. Daniel swallowed hard. He stood, his legs unsteady, and turned toward the hallway. The nightlight was out. The darkness was absolute. And in that darkness, a whisper of movement, or the creak of a floorboard. The watch screen flickered back to life. Steps logged 1,248. One more than the loop. Daniel didn't wait for the next step. He ran. Daniel's morning run had always been his sanctuary, the one time of day when his mind quieted, when the world narrowed to the rhythm of his breath and the steady pounding of his feet against pavement. But not today. Today. Today something was wrong. The sun had barely risen, painting the streets in pale gold, but the air felt thick, charged, as if a storm lurked just beyond the horizon. Rex was gone. Mrs. Holloway was gone. And the thing in his apartment, the thing that wore his face, was getting stronger. Daniel picked up his pace, his lungs burning, his legs still aching from the phantom miles he hadn't run. His new watch, a cheap replacement after the last one shattered, remained silent. No steps logged. No messages. Normal. He clung to that word like a lifeline. Then, wariness, movement, a flicker at the edge of his vision. Daniel slowed, turning his head. The sidewalk stretched empty behind him. But his shadow didn't match. It stretched too long, too thin, its arms slightly raised, its posture all wrong. Daniel's breath hitched. He stopped, staring at the distorted silhouette on the pavement. The shadow stopped too, but it didn't settle. It twitched, a jerky, unnatural movement like a puppet tugged by unseen strings. Daniel's pulse pounded in his throat. He took a step back. The shadow mimicked him, but slower, delayed. Then, as Daniel watched, it tilted its head. A whisper of static crackled in the air, so faint he might have imagined it. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. What do you want? No answer. Just the shadow, motionless now, its edges too sharp, too defined against the concrete. Daniel forced himself to turn away, He broke into a sprint, his muscles screaming in protest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind him, the sound of footsteps. Not his own. Faster. Daniel didn't look back. He couldn't. The footsteps kept pace effortlessly, the rhythm steady, unhurried. Then a breath against his ear, cold, sharp. "You can't outrun me." Daniel's legs buckled. He stumbled, catching himself against a lamppost, his chest heaving. The street was empty, no shadow, no footsteps. Just the wind rustling the leaves overhead. His watch buzzed. Daniel flinched, his stomach dropping as he lifted his wrist. A single notification, steps logged 1,247. The loop had followed him outside. And now he wasn't the only one running. Chapter 16. The bloodied watch. Daniel woke to the metallic tang of blood in the air. His eyes flew open, his body rigid with the sudden, instinctive certainty that something was wrong. The room was dark, the curtains drawn, but the faint glow of street light seeped in through the gaps, painting jagged lines across the ceiling. He sat up slowly, his muscles stiff, his throat dry. The sheets clung to him, damp with sweat. Then he saw it. On the nightstand, where he'd left his new watch before collapsing into bed, a dark smear. Daniel's breath hitched. He reached out, fingers trembling, and flicked on the lamp. The light confirmed his worst fear. The watch face was smeared with blood. His stomach lurched. He turned his hands over, examining his palms, his wrists, his arms, but his skin was clean. No cuts, no scrapes, no sign of injury. The blood wasn't his. The watch buzzed against the nightstand, the vibration sending a fresh droplet sliding down its face. Daniel recoiled, his pulse hammering. The screen lit up, casting an eerie red glow across the bed. Steps logged 1,247. The same cursed number. But this time, beneath it a new line. Blood pressure 190/120. Daniel's mouth went dry. That wasn't his reading. His blood pressure had always been textbook perfect, even during the most grueling marathon training. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, it hurts. Daniel's fingers hovered over the screen, his mind racing. The blood was fresh, glistening under the lamplight. He grabbed a tissue and wiped it away, revealing the watch's pristine surface beneath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a slow, crimson bead welled up from beneath the watch's edge, as if the device itself were bleeding. Daniel jerked back, the tissue falling from his grasp. The watch buzzed violently, skittering across the nightstand like a dying insect. The screen flashed red. Blood pressure 200/130. Heart rate 180 BPM. Daniel's own pulse spiked in response. The readings were catastrophic, the kind that preceded a stroke or a heart attack. But they weren't his. The watch stopped moving. The screen dimmed. Silence. Then a sound from the bathroom. A wet, ragged cough. Daniel's blood turned to ice. He stood, his legs unsteady, and crept toward the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar, the darkness beyond absolute. Another cough, weaker this time. The sound of someone struggling to breathe. Daniel's fingers found the light switch. He flicked it on. The bathroom was empty. But the mirror was fogged. And scrawled across its surface in shaky, dripping letters, "You left me to die." Daniel stumbled back, his shoulder hitting the doorframe. The words gleamed wetly, the condensation streaking like tears. His watch buzzed from the nightstand. He didn't need to look to know what it said. The loop was complete, and now it was bleeding. Daniel stared at the blood-streaked watch, his reflection fractured in its cracked screen. The numbers still pulsed 1,247 steps, but the path had changed. This time the dotted line led outside, in through the front door, down the sidewalk, into the park where he trained for marathons. His stomach twisted. He hadn't left the apartment all night. The bathroom mirror's accusation still gleamed behind him, the words refusing to fade. He grabbed the watch, ignoring the fresh smear of red on his fingertips, and pulled up the timestamp. 3:17 a.m. The same as always. Daniel exhaled sharply and scrolled back through the logs. The same loop, night after night, but now the distance was increasing. 1.5 miles, 2.3 miles, 3.1 miles, a half marathon's worth of steps, all logged while he lay in bed. His legs ached at the thought, the phantom soreness deepening as if he'd actually run those miles. He rubbed his calves, the muscles twitching under his fingers. Rex would have noticed if he'd left. Rex always did. But Rex was gone. Daniel's throat tightened. He shoved the watch into his pocket and grabbed his phone, pulling up the security footage from last night. The cameras had glitched again. 3 a.m. to 3:17 a.m. was nothing but static. He rewound further. There, 2:58 a.m. The living room was empty. The hallway still. Then at exactly 3 a.m. the front door opened. By itself. Daniel's breath caught. The footage skipped. Now it showed the door closing. 3:17 a.m. 17 minutes unaccounted for. The 17 minutes where something had walked out of his apartment, wearing his face. His watch buzzed in his pocket. A new notification. Unknown sender, you left the door open again. Daniel's fingers clenched around the phone. He knew what he had to do. If the thing was taking his form, if it was running his routes, then there'd be proof. 8 cameras in the park. Witnesses. Footprints. Daniel grabbed his keys and headed for the door. The watch buzzed once more. Steps logged. 1,248. One step closer to the finish line. Daniel strapped himself to the bed. It had taken 3 belts, one across his chest, another around his waist, the last cinched tight around his ankles, but he was immobilized. The leather bit into his skin, the buckle cold against his ribs. He'd even duct-taped his wrists to the headboard for good measure. No more sleepwalking. No more phantom runs, he exhaled, staring at the ceiling. The bedroom door was locked. The windows latched. The watch, still smeared with blood, lay on the nightstand, its screen dark. Rex's absence was a fresh wound. Daniel had searched the neighborhood for hours, calling until his voice cracked, but there'd been no sign of the dog. No collar, no prints, nothing. Just the lingering dread that whatever had taken Rex was the same thing wearing his face in the park footage. Daniel closed his eyes. Sleep came like a hammer blow. He woke to the sound of footsteps. Not in the hallway. In the room. Daniel's eyes flew open. The belts held fast, the duct tape unbroken. He hadn't moved. Yet the footsteps circled the bed light, quick, the creak of floorboards unmistakable. His watch lit up. Steps logged 1-2. Daniel strained against the restraints, his pulse roaring. Who's there? No answer. The footsteps paused at the foot of the bed. The air grew colder. Daniel's breath fogged in front of him. Then a weight settled onto the mattress. The bed dipped, the springs groaning, as if someone had climbed onto it. Daniel's throat tightened. Stop. The watch buzzed. Steps logged. 47. The weight shifted, crawling up the bed slow, deliberate. The blankets tightened around Daniel's legs as something moved beneath them. A hand, a foot. Daniel thrashed, the belts cutting into his skin. Get off. The watch screen flashed red. Steps logged. 112. The mattress creaked again. The weight settled over him now, pressing down, the cold seeping through the sheets. Daniel gasped, his ribs aching under the invisible pressure. The watch buzzed violently. Unknown sender. You can't stop running. Daniel's vision blurred. The pressure intensified, crushing his chest, his lungs burning for air. He twisted his wrists against the tape, the skin tearing, blood slicking his fingers. The watch logged another step. 2:47. The bedroom door swung open. A shadow stood in the hallway, tall, thin, its edges wavering like heat haze. Daniel's watch shattered. Glass rained onto the nightstand. The pressure vanished. The bed was empty. The belts hung loose, the duct tape peeled back as if melted. Daniel sat up, his breath ragged. The shadow was gone. But on the floor, leading from the bed to the doorway, a trail of muddy footprints. Fresh. His size. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for the broken watch. The screen flickered once before dying completely. The last notification remained, burned into the glass. Steps logged. 1,247. The loop was complete. And somewhere out there something was still running. Daniel's phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the darkened bedroom. He reached for it with stiff fingers, his body still aching from the phantom weight that had pinned him to the bed. The notification was from an unknown number. Unknown, stop running. It's almost your turn. Daniel's breath hitched. He sat up, the sheets pooling around his waist, and typed a reply before he could second-guess himself. No one looked up. No one noticed, because the footsteps weren't real to them. They were his alone, and they were counting down. Daniel bolted for the door. Behind him, the cafe's bell jingled again. But no one had entered. No one had left. The watch buzzed one last time. Steps logged. 1,247. The loop reset. And the footsteps followed him home. Daniel sat in the sterile white exam room, the crinkling paper beneath him loud in the silence. His doctor, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a permanent frown, scrolled through the data on his tablet, his expression unreadable. Your vitals are perfect, Dr. Langley said finally, setting the tablet aside. Blood pressure, cholesterol, heart rate, all textbook. Daniel flexed his fingers against his knees. That's not possible. The doctor raised an eyebrow. You're in excellent shape, Daniel. Better than most men your age. Daniel lifted his wrist, the new watch gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Then explain this. He pulled up the health logs, scrolling to yesterday's readings. There, clear as day, beneath his own steady heart rate. Second heartbeat detected, 89 BPM. Dr. Langley took the watch, his frown deepening as he studied the screen. He tapped through the menus, checked the sensors, even held it to his own wrist. The second heartbeat didn't appear for him. It's a glitch, he said, handing it back. These things aren't infallible. Daniel's jaw tightened. It's not a glitch, the doctor sighed. Daniel, I've run every test. There's no medical explanation for a second heartbeat. Your heart is fine. Your watch is malfunctioning. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, but the words died in his throat. How could he explain the whispers? The footsteps. The thing that wore his face. Dr. Langley softened. Stress can do strange things to the body and the mind. Maybe it's time to consider I'm not imagining this, Daniel snapped. The doctor studied him for a long moment, then scribbled something on a prescription pad. What it? No, try this. For sleep. Daniel didn't take it. The watch buzzed against his wrist. He didn't need to look to know what it said. Unknown sender, he can't hear me. Daniel stood abruptly, the paper tearing beneath him. Thanks for your time. Dr. Langley called after him as he left, but Daniel was already moving, already running just like always. Outside, the sun was too bright, the air too still. His watch buzzed again. Second heartbeat, 92 BPM. Picking up speed. Daniel broke into a sprint. The footsteps followed. And this time they were laughing. Daniel ran through the dark. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. The world blurred around him, trees smeared into shadows, streetlights stretched into glowing streaks. He didn't know where he was going. Only that he couldn't stop. Behind him, the footsteps kept pace. Not the steady rhythm of a jogger, not the erratic stumble of a pursuer. These were wrong, too light, too quick. Like something skimming just above the ground. Daniel risked a glance over his shoulder. The street was empty, but his shadow stretched too long, its arms outstretched, fingers grasping. And beside it, a second shadow, taller, thinner, its edges flickering like static. Daniel's watch buzzed against his wrist. Steps logged, 1,247. The loop. Always the loop. He pushed harder, his sneakers slapping against wet pavement. When had it rained, the air smelled of damp earth and something metallic, like blood on the wind. A whisper brushed his ear. You can't outrun me. Daniel's breath hitched. He swerved left, cutting through an alley, his shoulders scraping against brick. The footsteps followed, echoing off the walls, multiplying until it sounded like a crowd chasing him. His watch buzzed again. Heart rate, 180 BPM. And beneath it, second heartbeat, 180 BPM. In sync. Daniel's vision blurred. He stumbled, catching himself against a dumpster, his palms slick with sweat. The alley dead-ended ahead, blocked by a chain-link fence. Trapped, the footsteps slowed. Daniel turned, his back pressed to the fence, his chest heaving. The alley was empty, but the air pulsed. A shadow detached itself from the wall, its edges wavering like heat haze. Tall, thin, featureless. The thing from his apartment. The thing wearing his face. Daniel's watch buzzed. Unknown sender, ready or not, the shadow stepped forward. Daniel scrambled up the fence, the metal biting into his fingers. He hauled himself over the top, ignoring the tear of fabric as his shirt caught on the spikes. He landed hard on the other side, his knees buckling, but he didn't stop. He ran. The footsteps followed. Closer now. Daniel's watch buzzed again. Steps logged, 1,248. One more than the loop. One step closer to the end. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Daniel screamed. He woke in his bed, drenched in sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs. The sheets were tangled around his legs, the bedroom dark except for the pale glow of the streetlight through the blinds. In a dream. Just a dream. Daniel exhaled shakily and rubbed his face. His legs ached as if he'd actually been running, his muscles trembling with phantom exhaustion. His watch lay on the nightstand, silent. Daniel reached for it. The screen lit up. Steps logged 1,247. And beneath it, a new notification, unknown sender, sweet dreams. Daniel's stomach twisted. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and froze. His running shoes sat neatly by the bedroom door, now caked in mud, still damp. Daniel's breath came in shallow gasps. It hadn't been a dream. He'd run, and something had chased him. Something that was still counting down. Daniel's legs were covered in scratches. Thin, angry red lines crisscrossed his calves, his thighs, the tops of his feet, as if he'd sprinted through a bramble patch in the dark. He probed the marks with trembling fingers, wincing at the sting. They were real. They were the watch on his nightstand buzzed. Daniel stared at the message. "Who is this?" He typed. The response came instantly. "You know." A chill skittered down his spine. He glanced at the broken watch on the nightstand, its face still smeared with blood. The belts he'd used to strap himself down lay in a tangled heap on the floor, their buckles glinting in the dim light. His fingers hovered over the screen. "What do you want?" This time the reply took longer. The 3 dots pulsed, disappeared, then pulsed again. Daniel's pulse throbbed in his throat. "Finally, to finish what you started." Daniel exhaled sharply. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his bare feet pressing into the cold hardwood. The apartment was silent, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic. Another message popped up. "Look outside." Daniel's stomach twisted. He stood, his muscles protesting, and crossed to the window. The blinds were drawn, but a sliver of moonlight seeped through the gap at the bottom. He hesitated, then lifted the blind. The street below was empty, except a figure stood beneath the flickering street lamp across the road. Tall, thin, dressed in running gear. Daniel's breath fogged the glass. The figure didn't move, didn't react. It just stood there, face tilted upward, as if staring directly at him. But it had no face, just smooth, featureless skin, glowing faintly in the lamplight. Daniel's phone buzzed again. "See you soon." He dropped the blind and stumbled back, his heart hammering. The figure hadn't moved like a person, hadn't breathed like a person. It had just waited. His phone buzzed once more. Tick-tock. Daniel's hands shook as he typed. "What happens when it's my turn?" The reply was immediate. "You run." Then a sound from the hallway. A floorboard creaked. Daniel's head snapped up. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Beyond it, the hallway was dark, too dark. A shadow moved. Quick, darting, just out of sight. Another buzz, or you die. The bedroom door creaked open another inch. Daniel didn't wait. He ran, daylight. But the footsteps followed him even then. Daniel quickened his pace, weaving through the crowded sidewalk. His breath came shallow. The sun hung high, casting sharp shadows, but the air felt wrong. Thick, charged, like the apartment had felt at night. His new watch buzzed against his wrist, vibrating constantly now, like a relentless pulse. Steps logged, 1,247. The same number, always the same. But this time the steps weren't his. Daniel risked a glance over his shoulder. The street behind him bustled commuters, shoppers, joggers. No one looked at him. No one paid him any mind. Yet the footsteps persisted. Tap, tap, tap. Light. Quick, just out of sync with his own. Daniel clenched his jaw and ducked into a coffee shop. The bell above the door jingled. Warm air rushed to meet him, roasted beans and steamed milk. A stark contrast to the chill clinging to his skin. He ordered an espresso and slumped into a corner booth, his fingers drumming against the table. Buzz. Steps logged, 1,248. Daniel froze. He wasn't moving. Across the cafe, a man in a dark hoodie sat with his back to the room, shoulders hunched over a phone. Something about the posture, the way his fingers tapped restlessly against the table, familiar. Buzz. Steps logged, 1,249. The man didn't turn, didn't move, but the footsteps in Daniel's ears grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. Closer now. His espresso arrived. The cup clinked softly against the saucer. Daniel wrapped his hands around it, letting the heat sink into his palms. The barista gave him a polite smile before walking away. When Daniel looked back, the booth across from him was empty. The man in the hoodie, gone. But on the table, a single, mud-caked shoe print. Fresh. His watch buzzed violently. A new message. You can't outrun me. The footsteps echoed in his ears now. Louder than ever, Daniel stood abruptly, knocking over his espresso. The dark liquid spread across the table, thick, slow, dark as blood. Steps logged, 1,247. The same loop. The same cursed number, but this time the map showed something new. A dotted line traced a path through the city, his city starting at his apartment, winding through alleys, circling the park, and ending at the chain-link fence where the nightmare had chased him, where the shadow had grabbed his shoulder. Daniel's breath hitched. It wasn't a dream. He had run, and the scratches proved it. He grabbed his phone, pulling up the camera roll. His hands shook as he scrolled through the photos he'd taken before bed, his legs clean, unmarked. Then a timestamp jumped. 3:17 a.m. for a new photo, one he hadn't taken. The image was dark, blurry, but unmistakable. His own legs mid-stride, the pavement beneath him wet with rain, the scratches already forming. Daniel's stomach lurched. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, you're getting closer. Daniel threw back the sheets and stood, his muscles protesting. The bedroom was cold, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. His running shoes still sat by the door, mud flaking onto the hardwood. He crouched beside them, turning one over in his hands. The tread was worn, the laces frayed, stuffed inside a crumpled piece of paper. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears as he pulled it free and smoothed it open. A single word, scrawled in shaky handwriting that wasn't his, finished. The watch buzzed violently. Daniel flinched, nearly dropping the paper. The screen flashed red. Steps logged, 1,248. One more than the loop. One step closer to a sound from the hallway. A whisper of movement. Daniel's head snapped up. The bedroom door was closed, but beneath it a shadow stretched across the floorboards. Too tall, too thin. Waiting, Daniel's breath fogged in the air. The shadow didn't move, but the door handle turned. Daniel stumbled back, his legs hitting the bed. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender tick-tock. The door creaked open. The hallway was dark, empty, but the scratches on Daniel's legs burned. And the watch counted down. Steps logged, 1,247. The loop reset. The chase began again. Daniel hurled the watch into the trash with a force that rattled the bin. It landed with a dull thud atop coffee grounds and crumpled takeout containers, its cracked screen still faintly glowing. Enough, he muttered, wiping his hands on his jeans as if the device had left a stain. He'd spent the last hour scrubbing mud from his running shoes, the scratches on his legs stinging under the hot water. The watch was the source, he was sure of it. Every phantom step, every whispered threat, every shadow that wore his face, it all traced back to that damned device. The apartment was silent now. No footsteps. No static. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant rush of traffic outside. Daniel exhaled and slumped onto the couch, rubbing his temples. His head throbbed, a dull ache settling behind his eyes. He needed sleep. Real sleep. Not the fractured, nightmare-riddled scraps he'd been surviving on. He closed his eyes. The dream came instantly. He was running. Always running. The street stretched endlessly before him, the pavement slick with rain. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. Behind him, the footsteps grew louder, closer, until they were right at his back, breathing down his neck. Daniel jolted awake, gasping. Sunlight streamed through the blinds. Morning. He'd actually slept. He sat up, relief washing over him, then froze. On his wrist, the watch gleamed. His watch. The one he'd thrown away. Daniel's breath hitched. He tore at the strap, his fingers slipping in his panic. The device clung to him, the metal warm against his skin, as if it had been there for hours. Days. The screen lit up. Steps logged, 1,247. Daniel's stomach twisted. He stumbled to the trash can and yanked it open. Empty. No coffee grounds. No takeout containers. And no watch. Just a single mud-caked shoe print at the bottom of the bin. Daniel's hands shook as he lifted his wrist, staring at the device. The cracks were gone. The screen pristine. A new notification appeared. Unknown sender, you can't get rid of me. Daniel's vision blurred. The apartment tilted around him. The watch buzzed again. Steps logged, 0. The countdown had reset. And this time it wasn't letting go. Daniel saw it in broad daylight. The figure stood motionless on the crowded sidewalk, its edges wavering like heat distortion. Tall, thin, faceless. The same shadow that had haunted his apartment, his dreams him. No one else noticed. Pedestrians streamed past, shoulders brushing the figure's arms, briefcases clipping its legs, but no one flinched. No one turned. It was as if the thing didn't exist to them. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He stood frozen at the crosswalk, his fingers clenched around the strap of his gym bag. The figure didn't move, didn't react. It simply watched him, its blank face tilted slightly, as if studying prey. The light changed. The crowd surged forward. Daniel didn't move. The figure raised one hand slow, deliberate, and curled its fingers inward. "Come here." Daniel's watch buzzed against his wrist. He didn't need to look to know what it said. Steps logged 1,247. The figure stepped backward, melting into the crowd. Daniel's legs moved before his mind could protest. The ink key. He pushed through the throng of people, his pulse hammering, his gaze locked on the spot where the figure had been. But the air where it had stood was colder, the scent of damp earth lingering. A woman jostled Daniel's shoulder, shooting him a glare. "Watch it." Daniel barely registered her. His eyes darted across the street, searching for any flicker of movement, any unnatural shadow. Nothing. Then a whisper in his ear so soft it could have been the wind. "You can't hide from me." Daniel spun. The sidewalk behind him was empty. But his watch buzzed again. "Unknown sender, I see you." Daniel's stomach dropped. Across the street, beneath the awning of a closed bookstore, the figure stood once more. This time it was closer. Daniel's hands shook. He took a step back, then another, his body moving on instinct. The figure tilted its head. And then it smiled, a jagged, too wide stretch of its featureless face, splitting like a wound. Daniel's vision tunneled. His knees buckled. The watch buzzed violently. Steps logged 1,248. One step closer. One step too many. Daniel turned and ran. Behind him, the crowd moved on, oblivious. But the footsteps followed. And this time they weren't his. Daniel's morning run was supposed to be normal. Just another loop through the park, another attempt to outpace the dread that clung to him like a second shadow. The sun had barely risen, painting the trail in gold and long, stretching silhouettes. His new watch, his third one, remained silent for once, its screen dark. No steps logged, no phantom messages. For the first time in weeks, he almost felt human again. Then something grabbed his shoulder. Daniel stumbled mid-stride, his sneaker catching on the pavement. A cold, vise-like grip wrenched him backward, spinning him around so hard his teeth clacked together. His pulse roared in his ears as he flailed, arms swinging at empty air. There was no one there. The trail stretched empty in both directions. No joggers, no cyclists, just the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city waking up. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. He patted his shoulder where the grip had been. The fabric of his shirt was damp, as if pressed by icy fingers. His watch buzzed. He flinched, nearly dropping to his knees. The screen lit up. Sprint detected. 0.3 miles. Pace 4:32 /mile. Daniel's stomach twisted. He hadn't sprinted, hadn't even moved after the hand grabbed him. He pulled up the map. A dotted line veered off the main trail, cutting through a patch of trees before rejoining the path farther ahead, a route he'd never taken. The timestamp read 6:17 a.m. Exactly 17 minutes ago. Daniel's mouth went dry. He rewound the data, checking his heart rate. There. A spike at 6 a.m. 180 BPM sustained for exactly 17 minutes. The same pattern as every other night. Oh, the same cursed loop. But this time it had happened while he was awake. Daniel's hands shook as he scrolled further. At 6:17 a.m. his heart rate had plummeted back to normal. The exact moment the hand let go. A twig snapped behind him. Daniel whirled around. The trail was still empty. But his shadow was wrong. Or too tall, arms too long, fingers splayed like claws. And beside it, a second shadow close enough to touch. Daniel's watch buzzed again. Unknown sender tag. You're at the second shadow lunged. Daniel ran. Behind him, the laughter followed. Daniel woke gasping. His lungs burned as if he'd been submerged, his chest heaving against an invisible weight. He clawed at his throat, fingers scraping skin, desperate for air that wouldn't come. The bedroom tilted around him, shadows pooling in the corners like spilled ink. His watch buzzed violently against his wrist. The screen flashed red. Heart rate 0 BPM. Duration 30 seconds. Daniel's vision blurred. He staggered upright, his knees buckling as he crashed into the nightstand. The lamp toppled, plunging the room into darkness. His ribs ached with the ghost of a pressure that had vanished seconds ago, something heavy, something cold, pressing down until his breath stuttered out. The watch buzzed again. Heart rate 112 BPM. Recovery log. Daniel pressed a hand to his chest, his pulse hammering beneath his fingertips. In 30 seconds. His heart had stopped for 30 seconds. He should be dead. Should be brain dead. But here he was. Alive. Shaking. The bedroom door creaked open. Daniel's breath hitched. The hallway was dark. Too dark. A whisper of movement stirred the air, a shift in the blackness, subtle as a held breath. Daniel's watch lit up. Steps logged 1,247. The same cursed number. But this time, the map showed no path. Just a single dot. His location, pulsing. Waiting. The air in the room grew colder. Daniel's exhales fogged in front of him, the temperature dropping so fast his teeth chattered. Something was here. Something that had stolen his breath. Something that wasn't done yet. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, you're not running anymore. Daniel's legs gave out. He collapsed to the floor, his back pressed against the bed frame, his fingers scrambling for purchase on the hardwood. The darkness in the hallway moved, a shape emerged, tall, thin, its edges wavering like heat haze. No face, no features. Just a silhouette cut from the absence of light. It stepped forward. Daniel's watch buzzed. Heart rate 180 BPM. And beneath it, second heartbeat 180 BPM. In sync. The figure loomed over him, its shadow swallowing the room. Daniel's breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. His fingers found the baseball bat beside the bed, cold metal against his palm, but his arms refused to move. The figure crouched. A hand skeletal, icy brushed Daniel's throat. His vision tunneled. His lungs seized. The watch screen flashed red. Heart rate 0 BPM. Duration mace 45 seconds. The last thing Daniel saw before the darkness took him was his own reflection in the blank face of the figure leaning over him and the smile it wore. Daniel's fingers traced the symbol carved into his front door, 3 jagged lines intersecting a perfect circle. The wood splintered where the knife had bitten deep. The mark hadn't been there yesterday. Hadn't been there 3 hours ago when he'd left for his doomed doctor's appointment. The watch on his wrist buzzed, the vibration crawling up his arm like a living thing. He didn't need to look to know what it would say. Steps logged, 1,247. The map showed a dotted line leading from the sidewalk to his doorstep, footsteps that weren't his own. Daniel exhaled sharply, his breath fogging in the evening chill. The street behind him was quiet, the neighbors' windows dark. No witnesses, no one to ask who had stood here, blade in hand, etching this symbol into his door while his watch counted their steps. The wood was cold beneath his fingertips, too cold. The grooves of the carving hummed with a vibration that matched the watch's incessant buzzing, as if the symbol itself were alive. Daniel's phone chimed. Unknown sender opened me, his stomach dropped. He glanced at the watch, no new notification. The message had come through his regular texts, from a number with no area code. The deadbolt clicked. Daniel jerked back, his shoulder blades hitting the opposite wall of the narrow hallway. He hadn't touched the knob, hadn't even breathed near it. The door creaked open an inch. Darkness yawned beyond it, thicker than the evening gloom. The air that spilled out smelled of damp earth and something metallic like the scent that clung to his bloodied watch. His pulse hammered in his throat. The apartment should be empty. Should be safe, but the darkness beyond the door didn't look like his apartment. It looked like the void that had swallowed him last night when his heart stopped. The watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, you left me outside. Daniel's fingers found the baseball bat he'd taken to keeping by the door. The wood was solid, real, a tangible weight in his grip. He tightened his hold and stepped forward. 1 pace. 2. The door swung open the rest of the way on silent hinges. The apartment beyond was dark, but not empty. Shapes moved in the blackness, shadows shifting where no light source existed to cast them. The air hummed with static, the same frequency as the watch's vibrations. Daniel's breath came in shallow gasps. He reached for the light switch, a hand closed over his wrist. Ice cold, skeletal. Familiar, the watch screen lit up, illuminating the figure standing nose to nose with him. Blank face, hollow eyes, smile too wide. Daniel's heart stuttered. The figure leaned in, its breath like winter against his ear. Welcome home. The door slammed shut behind him. The watch buzzed one last time. Steps logged, 1,248. The loop was broken. And Daniel was no longer the one running. Rex refused to cross the threshold. The dog planted his paws at the front door, his tail tucked between his legs, a low whine building in his throat. His nostrils flared as he sniffed the air, his ears pinned back. Daniel crouched beside him, running a hand through the dog's fur. Come on, boy. It's just home. Rex whined louder and backed away, his claws scraping against the porch boards. His eyes, wide and white-rimmed, never left the darkened hallway beyond the door. Daniel's stomach twisted. He'd found Rex an hour ago, wandering near the park, his collar missing, his fur matted with mud and something darker that flaked away like dried blood. The dog had bolted to him, trembling, licking his hands as if to make sure he was real, but now, at the doorstep, he acted like the house was a living thing. The watch on Daniel's wrist buzzed. He didn't look. Instead, he stepped inside, leaving the door open for Rex. The air in the house was still, thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic. The floorboards creaked under his weight, the sound too loud in the silence. See? Daniel called over his shoulder. Nothing to. The door slammed shut behind him. Daniel spun, his pulse skyrocketing. Rex's frantic barking muffled through the wood, his claws scrabbling at the paint. The deadbolt slid home with a soft click. Daniel's breath hitched. He grabbed the knob, twisting, pulling. Locked. From the inside. The watch buzzed again, more insistent this time. Daniel finally looked down. Steps logged 1,247. But the map didn't show his apartment. It showed his house, every room, every hallway, laid out in perfect detail. A dotted line traced a path through the kitchen, down the hall, into the living room, and back to the front door, right where Daniel stood. The footsteps weren't his. They were already inside a floorboard creaked upstairs. Daniel's head snapped up. His fingers tightened around the baseball bat he hadn't realized he was still holding. Silence. Then, tap a single footstep, directly above him. The watch buzzed. Steps logged 1,248.1 more than the loop. Rex's barking turned frantic, his body thudding against the door. Another creak from upstairs, closer now, as if whatever walked there had reached the top of the steps. Daniel's mouth went dry. He should run. Should break a window, kick down the door, anything, but his legs refused to move. The air grew colder. His breath fogged in front of him. The watch screen flashed red. Unknown sender, you left the door open for me. A whisper of movement on the stairs. Something coming down. Something that had been waiting. Rex let out a final, terrified yelp, then silence. The watch buzzed one last time. Steps logged 1,247. The loop reset, and in the stillness of the house, Daniel realized he wasn't alone. He never had been. And now, neither was Rex. Daniel stood frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, his fingers gripping the edge of the sink. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows under his eyes. He'd come to splash water on his face, to shake off the lingering dread from the locked door, from Rex's terrified whines. But the mirror had other plans. The glass fogged over without warning, tendrils of condensation spreading like frost across its surface. Daniel recoiled, his breath catching in his throat. The air wasn't cold. The shower hadn't run, yet the fog thickened, obscuring his reflection. Then, letters formed, slow, deliberate, as if an invisible finger traced them into the glass. "You can't outrun me." Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. His reflection flickered behind the words, distorted, as if seen through warped glass. The faucet turned on by itself, water gushing into the sink. It ran too hot, too fast, steam rising in thick curls, fogging the mirror further. A second message appeared beneath the first. "I'm already inside." Daniel stumbled back, his shoulder hitting the doorframe. The bathroom light flickered once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The water still ran, the sound deafening in the small space. Something moved in the blackness, a shift in the air, a presence Daniel felt more than saw. His watch buzzed against his wrist. He didn't look, couldn't, because in the mirror, even in the dark, the words still glowed. Faint, pulsing, like a heartbeat. The light flicked back on. The mirror was clear. No fog, no messages. Just Daniel's wide-eyed reflection, his face pale, his lips parted in a silent gasp. The faucet shut off. Silence. Then a whisper so close it brushed his ear. Tick-tock. Daniel bolted from the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. His watch buzzed again. This time he looked. Unknown sender, the mirror isn't the only thing watching. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. Because the map on his watch, the dotted line of footsteps, now ended inside the bathroom, right where he'd been standing. Daniel laced his running shoes with shaking fingers. The clock on the nightstand read 2:58 a.m. 19 minutes until the loop reset. 19 minutes until the footsteps began again. But this time he wouldn't be here to hear them. He stood, rolling his shoulders, testing the weight of the backpack slung over one arm. Inside, a change of clothes, his wallet, a flashlight. Everything he needed to disappear. The watch on his wrist stayed silent. He'd stopped checking it days ago. The numbers didn't matter anymore, only the running did. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Daniel froze. Too early. The loop shouldn't start yet. The sound didn't repeat. He exhaled and grabbed his keys from the dresser. The metal was ice cold against his palm, as if someone had been holding them outside in the winter air. The apartment was too quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator had gone silent, leaving only the sound of his own breath and the distant rush of blood in his ears. Daniel crept to the front door, avoiding the squeaky floorboard near the kitchen. His hand hovered over the deadbolt, a whisper from behind him. "Leaving so soon?" Daniel spun. The hallway was empty. But the air stirred, a cold current brushing his cheek like an exhale. His watch buzzed. Steps logged 1,247. Too early. Always too early now. Daniel didn't wait. He wrenched the door open and stepped into the hallway and collided with something solid. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, thin, dressed in running gear. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The man's face was turned away, his head tilted toward the stairwell, as if listening for something. Then, slowly, he turned. Daniel's stomach dropped. The man had his face. Same sharp jaw, same dark hair, same eyes. No, not the same. The eyes were wrong. Too wide, too bright. Glowing, the figure smiled. Daniel stumbled back into the apartment, his pulse roaring. The door slammed shut behind him, the lock clicking into place. His watch buzzed again. Unknown sender, you can't leave. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He was done running from this, done being chased. If this thing wanted him, let it try. Daniel stepped forward. The figure mirrored him. The watch buzzed. Steps logged 1,248. One step closer. One step too many. The figure lunged. Daniel swung. His fist passed straight through the thing's chest, meeting no resistance, the impact sending him sprawling onto the floor. The figure loomed over him, its smile widening, its eyes burning like twin stars. Daniel's watch shattered. Glass rained onto the hardwood. The figure reached for him, and the world went black. This section maintains the eerie, relentless tension of the story while setting up Daniel's final confrontation with the entity that's been haunting him. The word count is tight and focused, with vivid descriptions and punchy dialogue that keeps the momentum high. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments to the tone or pacing. The shadow figure kept pace. Daniel sprinted through the darkened streets, his lungs burning, his legs screaming in protest. The thing matched him stride for stride, not beside him, not behind him, but inside him. Every footfall sent jolts of phantom pain up his shins, as if his muscles were being shredded from within. His shattered watch still clung to his wrist, the cracked screen flickering with erratic glyphs. The step counter climbed relentlessly. 1,382, 1,383, 384. No loop this time. No circling back. Only the straight shot down Ashborough Road, the path his father had run the night he died. The streetlights flickered as Daniel passed beneath them. His shadow stretched long and distorted, its arms too thin, its fingers clawing at the pavement. And beside it another shadow, twisted, hungry, ancient, forging with his own a stitch tore through Daniel's side. He gasped, clutching his ribs, but his legs refused to slow. The watch logged a route leading nowhere, just a dead-end alley where his father had collapsed 10 years ago, asthma crushing his lungs as he reached for the inhaler that wasn't there. "You left him," the static voice whispered through the watch's broken speaker. "Just like you left me behind." Daniel skidded to a stop in the alley, gravel biting into his palms as he collapsed. The shadow figure halted beside him, its featureless face tilted in mock concern. The watch's screen illuminated the graffiti-scarred walls and the ghostly footprints glowing on the pavement. His father's, still fresh after all these years. Daniel's breath came in ragged sobs. "What do you want?" The figure crouched, its knee hovering just above the spot where Daniel's father had taken his last breath. "Finish the race," it whispered. The watch beeped once. Steps logged 1,447. The exact number of steps from Daniel's apartment to this alley. The shadow figure extended a hand not to harm, but to pull him up. Daniel recoiled, but his own arm lifted against his will, fingers stretching toward the thing's icy grip. Somewhere behind them, a dog barked. Rex's bark. The figure's head snapped toward the sound. Daniel seized the distraction. He grabbed the broken watch and smashed it against the pavement, the world shattered with it. The alley walls rippled like disturbed water. The shadow figure screamed a sound like radio static and twisting metal as cracks spider-webbed through its form. Daniel didn't wait to see it dissolve. He ran. Not away this time. Toward the barking. Toward the faint glow of sunrise bleeding over the rooftops. The phantom footsteps followed, but fainter now, stumbling, as if the thing wearing his face was finally tiring. Daniel's legs gave out 3 blocks from home. He crawled the last 100 yards, his fingers scraping concrete, Rex's frantic licks washing over his face as he collapsed on the doorstep. The sun rose. His watch lay in pieces in the alley. And for the first time in months, the apartment was silent. No footsteps, no whispers, just Rex's warm weight pressed against his side, and the terrible understanding that some races never truly end. They just change runners. This conclusion maintains the story's eerie atmosphere while delivering a satisfying climax to Daniel's ordeal. The word count is tight and impactful, with vivid sensory details and a lingering sense of unease. Let me know if you'd like any refinements. Daniel turned to confront the figure. The street was empty. No shadow, no glowing face, no twisted reflection of himself. Just the cracked asphalt stretching into the pre-dawn gloom, the yellow streetlight flickering overhead. But the watch, what remained of it, vibrated wildly against his wrist. The shattered screen sparked and hissed, the glass shards digging into his skin as the display flashed erratic symbols. 1, 247, 1, 247, 1, 247, the same cursed number, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Daniel's breath fogged in the cold air. His legs trembled beneath him, the phantom ache of miles he hadn't run still throbbing in his muscles. Rex pressed against his side, a low growl rumbling in the dog's chest as he stared at the empty road. "Where are you?" Daniel whispered. The watch buzzed harder, the vibration traveling up his arm like an electric current. The cracked face lit up one final time. Unknown sender behind you. Daniel spun. The street was still empty. But his shadow didn't turn with him. It stayed frozen in place, its edges too sharp, too defined against the pavement. And as Daniel watched, it raised one elongated arm, slow, deliberate, and pointed down the road. Toward the alley. Toward the place his father had died. Daniel's throat tightened. He took a step back, his heels scraping the curb. His shadow moved then, but not with him. It stepped forward, detaching itself from his feet, stretching long and thin across the asphalt. The watch buzzed violently, the broken glass drawing blood. Daniel didn't run. He was done running. "Show yourself," he said, his voice raw. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a whisper of static, crackling through the air like a radio tuning between stations. The street light above him flickered once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed the road. The watch's dying light cast jagged shadows across the pavement as the shadow figure emerged from the blackness, not from the alley, not from the empty street, but from Daniel's own silhouette. It peeled itself free, inch by inch, its edges wavering like heat haze. All thin, featureless. But this time, Daniel saw the truth. The runner's shorts, the frayed laces of its shoes, the heaving chest not from exhaustion, but from the asthma attack that had stolen his father's last breath. The watch fell from Daniel's wrist, hitting the pavement with a hollow clink. The figure stepped forward. Daniel stood his ground. "You're not me," he said. The figure tilted its head. Daniel swallowed hard. "You're him." The static swelled, the air vibrating with the force of it. The figure's blank face rippled, and for the first time, features emerged. His father's eyes, his father's mouth, his father's pain. The watch screen flashed red one final time before going dark forever. Steps logged, 1,247. The loop was complete. The race was over. And as the first light of dawn broke over the empty road, Daniel reached out and took his father's hand. This conclusion delivers the emotional payoff of Daniel's journey while maintaining the eerie atmosphere of the story. The word count is tight and impactful, with vivid imagery and a haunting resolution. Let me know if you'd like any refinements to the tone or pacing. Daniel stood in the alley, his father's cold fingers interlaced with his own. The static in the air had faded to a whisper, the oppressive dread lifting like fog under morning light. The shattered watch lay at their feet, its screen dark and lifeless. For the first time in months, the world was silent. No footsteps, no phantom heartbeats. Just the distant chirp of waking birds and the gentle panting of Rex beside him. His father's grip tightened. Daniel looked down and the watch flickered. A single line of text glowed weakly on the broken display. "I ran for you." Daniel's breath caught. The words shimmered, then shifted. "Now you run for me." The watch went dark again. His father's hand dissolved into mist, the cool vapor curling around Daniel's wrist before vanishing entirely. The alley stood empty save for Rex's quiet whine and the pounding of Daniel's own heart. He knelt, picking up the broken watch. The glass shards bit into his palm, drawing blood, but he barely felt it. The final message echoed in his mind, its meaning settling like a stone in his gut. This had never been a haunting. It had been a relay. Daniel turned the watch over in his hands, the truth crashing over him. His father hadn't been chasing him, he'd been passing the baton. The loop, the steps, the relentless countdown, all of it leading here. To this moment. To this understanding. Rex nudged his knee, tail wagging hesitantly. Daniel pocketed the broken watch and stood. The first golden rays of sunlight spilled over the alley walls, painting the pavement in warm hues. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine turned over. The world was waking up. And Daniel? Daniel started running, not away this time, not in fear, but because that's what runners do. Because the race never really ends. It just changes hands. And as his feet pounded the pavement in steady rhythm, as Rex loped happily beside him, Daniel could have sworn he felt it, the faintest whisper of static in his ear. The ghost of a hand on his shoulder, and the echo of footsteps keeping perfect time with his own. Daniel woke to the sound of knocking. He sat bolt upright in bed, his sheets damp with sweat. The digital clock on his nightstand read 3:02 a.m. The knocking came again, not from the front door, but from the shared wall with his neighbor's apartment. Thump. 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 Rex lifted his head from the foot of the bed, ears pricked forward. "Mr. Jenkins?" Daniel called out, his voice rough with sleep. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then Daniel? The voice through the wall was unmistakably his neighbor's, but something about it was off. The cadence was wrong, the pitch slightly too high. Daniel swung his legs over the side of the bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floor. Rex followed, his claws clicking against the hardwood as he sniffed at the baseboard where the sound had come from. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, pressing his palm against the wall. "You need to see this." Daniel's stomach twisted. He grabbed his phone and shuffled out into the hallway, Rex at his heels. The apartment was dark, the air thick with the scent of damp earth that never seemed to fade anymore. He flipped on the kitchen light and unlocked the deadbolt. The hallway outside was empty, the overhead bulb flickering weakly. Mr. Jenkins' door across the hall was slightly ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling onto the carpet. Daniel approached slowly, his pulse quickening. "Mr. Jenkins?" No answer.